This is the Happy Families podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson. We're Luke and Susie, and this is the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
I'm very excited, Suze, for the very first time in our show's history, we're going to get Feng Shui study style. This is maybe not Feng Shui, but it is the concept of how we actually physically set up our home. But we're talking about our children's success when it comes to school and learning, and how our furniture choices and the shape of our home could actually have a part to play in that.
Dr. Justin, in there?
Yeah, sorry, that was the high-pitched question tone.
Dr. Justin Coulson from happyfamilies.com.au. This is an important thing when we want our children to do as well as they can at school, obviously. How do we set up our home to encourage and foster a good learning environment?
Well, the first thing that I've got to say is I have no idea about interior decorating. Choosing paint colours. Apparently there is some psychology around colour. I don't know what it is. I'm not colourblind. My dad is. I'm not. I can see colours properly, but that doesn't mean that But in terms of the psychology of helping our children to do well, what we can do to set up our home environment, a really interesting study was published just in the last couple of months that has followed some kids, 2,200 families from low socioeconomic backgrounds across a 10-year period. Okay. And what these researchers found was pretty interesting. They said if parents will do three things consistently, they can predict that those children will do significantly better at school than if parents don't do those three things.
Okay.
I'm going to guess. I reckon I can guess one of them.
Go.
Reading with your children.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not precise, but it's part of a bigger thing. And then the first thing was we need to have books at home.
Yeah.
Books for our children to access. We need to be readers ourselves. Leaders are readers, and kids who do well at school come from homes usually where there's a lot of books. What the researchers found was that from the age of 12 months, parents have got picture books, no words, just pictures, and they'd sit down with their kids and they would read the picture books. In other words, rather than worrying about words, they'd just sort of talk about the story. They'd talk about the things that the person was wearing. They'd label the colour of their shirt or the smile on the dog and the funny way that the birdie was flapping its wings. And they would bring the child into this picture book story. And as the kids got older, more and more books needed to appear and the parents would read to them. Now, there's a really interesting side note to this from other research. As parents, most of us love to read to our kids, but we often don't do it very well. The best thing that we can do, especially for young children when we're reading to them, is to slow our reading down. We read too fast. We sort of lay down on the carpet next to their bed, or we lay down on the bed beside them and we say, okay, kids, it's bedtime. Once upon a time there was, oh, look at that, the end, good night.
Yeah, that's like when it comes to that time and you're exhausted and you go, bring us which books do you want? And they bring you 3 books and you go, that's big, that's big. I'm going to go for the smallest one.
My kids will bring me 8 or 9 books and they're like, read, and they're all the Dr. Seuss books. Our family is crazy about Dr. Seuss. And those poems, do you know how long those books are?
Yes, I
know. We love them, but they want to read 8 of them at a time. And I'm like, okay, we'll pick 3. And they're like, 5. We have this little negotiation. Usually they fall asleep in about the 3rd one because they take 15 minutes each. But what the research shows is we should read slowly and we should pause and we should ask the kids, what would you do if that happened to you? Yeah. Or how would that make you feel? You know, by doing that, we engage them, we get their brain going, we get them being creative, and that's really, really important. So books. What the researchers found was that the more the books are part of children's lives from the earliest beginnings, the better it is that they'll do at school in grade 5, which is where this study has stopped at this point.
Great.
Any guesses for the 2nd and 3rd?
Minimal screen time.
Didn't come into the study at all, but plenty of research suggests that screen time is a distraction, and we need to help our kids to minimise that screen time. Second one was educational toys and games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Note it didn't say educational apps
Yes.
because in the App Store at the moment, I think that there's a little over 90,000 educational apps, and what research would suggest is that less than 1% of them are actually educational.
Yeah.
They're just mind-numbing. So these are the kinds of games that encourage children to be counting or to be reading, or they're open-ended kind of toys and games where they get to explore and be creative. Things like Snakes and Ladders. That's an educational game for a 4-year-old because they're learning how to count along the board and roll a dice and do that. And if you throw in 2 dice, wow. Now we're really getting to some serious maths. And so those kinds of things, whether it's Chinese checkers or drafts or chess, or I guess I'm saying old school sort of educational toys and games.
And it's interesting because we've mentioned before about how our 6-year-old is wonderful at his 6 times tables that he's never been taught at school because he loves AFL.
The AFL.
And so the fun that's involved with doing the simple math has given him skills that school couldn't possibly get him to learn so quickly.
Perfect example, great example of that. And the third thing that we need to do to set our children up to do well actually has less to do with the way we set up our home and more to do with our availability. The researchers have found again, and this has been shown so many times now, and this was only looking at mums, but the more emotionally available, the more responsive mums are to their children, the better the kids do. They feel safe, they feel secure, they're open to learning, they do better.
Yeah. Wow. So good. It's so simple. I was thinking when we were talking about how to set up your home for children's success, I'm like, well, put the desk in the corner and make sure the lighting's good and make sure they've got plenty of, sharpened pencils.
But, Susie, that's important. It's just that it's not important in those first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of life because the kids aren't doing study at home at that point. Once they get into high school, we need to be having conversations around screen time, access to screens in bedrooms, having appropriate lighting, getting rid of distractions, keeping things nice and quiet. All of that comes into it, and there's plenty of research around what we need to do. But it still seems that the best predictors are engagement with books, engagement with parents, and having that downtime where we get to play and explore and be creative. Those seem to be 3 of the critical things to help our kids do well at school.
So good.
Beautiful. Very simple. I like it when we hear the expert in the research that says, I can do that. I can actually apply that and I can make some adjustments. And I always told you, Suze, we had this fight because I always wanted our bookshelves with books on it. And you said, but you've never read any of them. I go, but it's good. It makes me look smart. See, Justin, not only does it make me look smart, Justin's saying you need to have books in the house. It's good for our kids as well.
The kids can look at them and just absorb by osmosis.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Dad must be so smart. Look at all the books he hasn't read.
We underestimate osmosis, I think. Yeah.
Dr. Justin Coulson from happyfamilies.com.au. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
And there are loads of resources to help along with your parenting at the website happyfamilies.com.au, or if you're interested in having Dr. Justin Coulson speak at your school, community group or organisation, you can find out more at justincoulson.com.